Welcome to Tales of Truth. Today's story is one that mirrors the ancient struggle of Joseph in the house of Potiphar. A story of temptation, faith, and integrity. But this is told in a modern setting with modern people, modern challenges, and a timeless lesson. My friend, this is not just a story to entertain you. This is a message to strengthen you. If you've ever faced temptation or felt your integrity tested, listen carefully, because the conclusion of the story could shape how you handle your own battles. Before we begin, pause for just a moment. If you haven't yet subscribed, do it right now. Join our community at Tales of Truth, where we bring you lessons wrapped in powerful stories. Click subscribe, turn on notifications, and don't miss what could be the story that speaks directly to your heart today. Now, picture this. The heart of the city, filled with noise and ambition. Glass towers gleamed under the sun. Men and women hurried across streets with phones pressed to their ears, deals being struck, money being made. At the center of this whirlwind was Wellington Enterprises, one of the most prestigious firms in the city. Its CEO, James Wellington, was a man whose reputation stretched far and wide. He was tough, brilliant, and feared in the world of business. And then there was his wife, Clara. Beautiful, elegant, commanding attention whenever she entered a room. But behind the beauty was a woman weighed down by loneliness. Her husband was married to his empire, not to her. Into this world entered Michael Adams, a young professional with nothing but hard work and honesty to his name. He had clawed his way up from an ordinary background, working night shifts, studying by candlelight, and refusing to compromise his values. Landing a position at Wellington Enterprises was his answered prayer. On his first day, as he walked across the marbled lobby and gazed at the towering walls of glass, he whispered, "Lord, you brought me here. Keep me faithful." It began innocently, or so it seemed. One late evening, while finishing some documents in the executive office, the sound of high heels echoed in the corridor. Michael looked up. Standing in the doorway was Clara Wellington. "Working late again?" she asked, her voice smooth, her eyes lingering longer than necessary. "Yes, ma'am," the young assistant replied, rising slightly from his chair out of respect. Mr. Wellington wanted this ready before tomorrow's meeting. She stepped inside, closing the door softly behind her. "Such dedication," she murmured, her lips curving into a half-smile. "James is fortunate to have someone like you. Always loyal, always hardworking." Michael shifted uneasily, sensing something beneath her words. He forced a polite smile. "Thank you, ma'am. Just doing my job." From that day, her appearances became more frequent. Sometimes it was casual conversation. Sometimes it was a lingering touch on his arm as she passed him a file. Sometimes it was an invitation to discuss business in private. Each encounter was laced with an unspoken tension. In the office cafeteria, colleagues whispered, "Why is the boss's wife always around him?" one asked. Another shrugged. "Maybe she's just friendly." But Michael knew better. He felt the pressure tightening like a rope. One evening, she cornered him in the elevator. "Michael," she said, her voice low, her perfume filling the space. "You don't always have to be so serious. Don't you ever get tired of being the perfect employee?" He looked straight ahead, his jaw clenched. "I believe in doing what's right, Mrs. Wellington." She laughed softly. "Always formal, always faithful. Tell me, is there nothing in this world that could make you bend?" The doors opened, and he stepped out quickly, his heart pounding. Narrator pauses, music dips. "My friend, let me remind you, if you're finding this story gripping, don't forget to subscribe right now. Stories like this aren't just for listening, they're for learning. Subscribe to Tales of Truth and keep feeding your faith." Back in the story, temptation was no longer subtle. Clara had made up her mind, and Michael knew he was standing on the edge of a dangerous cliff. The storm reached its peak on a night that seemed ordinary at first. James Wellington had flown abroad for an urgent business trip, leaving Clara alone in their mansion. Michael was asked to deliver some important files to the house. He arrived at the massive iron gates, files in hand, his mind focused on dropping them off quickly. The butler showed him inside, then quietly disappeared. The air smelled of roses and expensive wine. The lights were dim, music playing softly. Clara appeared at the top of the staircase, dressed not for an evening alone, but as though expecting someone special. She descended slowly, her eyes locked on him. "You work too hard," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "Stay a while. You deserve a break." Michael's grip tightened on the files. "I only came to deliver these, ma'am," She stepped closer, her gaze intense. Why fight it, Michael? You've proven yourself loyal to James. But what has loyalty given you? Long hours? Endless work? Don't you deserve something for yourself? He stepped back, shaking his head. Respectfully, Mrs. Wellington, I cannot do this. It would be a betrayal to him, to you, and to my God. Her face hardened, rejection stinging her pride. Do you realize what you're turning down? Do you know what I could do for your career, your life? I know, he replied firmly, but my integrity is not for sale. With anger burning in her eyes, she reached for his arm. He pulled away, leaving the files on the table, and walked quickly toward the door. Michael! She shouted after him, her voice echoing through the grand hall. You'll regret this. He didn't look back. The faithful worker stepped out into the night, his heart racing, sweat on his brow, but his soul unbroken. The next morning, the storm truly hit. Clara, humiliated and enraged, twisted the story. She accused the young employee of misconduct, claiming he had made advances toward her. The whispers spread like wildfire through the company halls. Executives eyed him suspiciously. Colleagues avoided his desk. Even James Wellington, the man who had once trusted him above all, looked at him with narrowed eyes. I gave you everything, James said coldly during a tense meeting. And this is how you repay me? Michael stood tall, though his heart ached. Sir, with all due respect, I did nothing wrong. My loyalty has always been to you and to this company. But James's anger was fueled not by truth, but by pride. His wife's words carried more weight than the assistant's protests. Michael was stripped of his position and cast out of the firm he had served so faithfully. Friends urged him to fight back, to sue, to expose the lie. But he chose another path. God sees, he told them quietly. And if God sees, then justice will come in his time. It was a season of hardship. Jobless, reputation stained. He walked the streets wondering why doing the right thing had led to so much pain. But in his darkest nights, he remembered his prayer on the first day. Lord, keep me faithful. And that prayer became his anchor. The storm of false accusation had left scars, but the faithful worker never allowed bitterness to take root. Each night in his small apartment he knelt in prayer, whispering, Lord, you see what men cannot. Let truth speak for itself. While he kept faith, the empire that had rejected him was quietly unraveling. Inside Wellington Enterprises, once a fortress of wealth and prestige, cracks spread like lines on shattered glass. Audits revealed missing funds. Contracts vanished without explanation. Profits, once overflowing, drained away. At first James Wellington, proud and powerful, dismissed the signs as mistakes of subordinates or tricks of competitors. But the evidence mounted until denial became impossible. Investigators were summoned. They dug into ledgers, examined signatures, traced accounts. Piece by piece, a damning picture emerged. Clara, the woman James trusted as his wife, had woven a web of deception. She had siphoned money to cover debts, funded secret indulgences, and bribed officials. To shield herself from suspicion, she had wielded the oldest weapon, a lie. By accusing the assistant, she had turned James's fury away from herself. When the truth came crashing down, James felt the weight of betrayal like chains around his chest. In his private office, he sat surrounded by files and statements, each one a nail in the coffin of his illusions. He remembered how quickly he had believed Clara's trembling words, how swiftly he had cast out the one man who had never given him cause for doubt. Shame burned in his eyes. For the first time in years, the master of empires felt utterly powerless. Outside those glass towers, the man once disgraced was quietly rebuilding. He had found employment in a smaller firm, where his diligence soon set him apart. He arrived before others, stayed late when needed, and carried himself with humility. Colleagues who first looked at him with suspicion now admired him. His employer one evening said, "You've endured betrayal with dignity. That's rare. You're not only a worker, you're a man people can trust." Those words confirmed what faith had already taught him. Integrity is more valuable than gold. As Wellington Enterprises descended deeper into scandal, the faithful worker's reputation rose. Whispers traveled across the city. The assistant who had been cast out was innocent all along. The fraud was exposed. The guilty were unmasked. Soon newspapers carried headlines of corruption, and the name Clara Wellington appeared again and again, each mention staining her once glamorous image. At last, The day came when James Wellington could no longer carry the weight of guilt. In a gesture few had ever imagined, he sought out the man he had wronged. The visit was unannounced. The modest office fell silent when the wealthy businessman stepped inside. His suit was perfect, but his face was weary. He paused by the desk of the assistant, now busy with reports, and said quietly, "May I speak with you?" In a private room, James dropped the mask of authority. His voice cracked as he confessed, "I wronged you. I believed lies because it was easier than facing the truth. You were loyal, and I betrayed that loyalty. I cannot change the past, but I ask for forgiveness." The words hung heavy in the air. The younger man looked at him, not with anger, but with calm strength. "I forgave you long ago," he said, "because holding anger would only destroy me." James's eyes filled with tears. For decades he had commanded men, intimidated rivals, and bought loyalty. But in that room he encountered something beyond wealth or power. Grace. He reached out a trembling hand, and it was clasped firmly. In that handshake there was reconciliation, and a testimony that faith is stronger than betrayal. The story spread like wildfire. Business circles spoke of the assistant's integrity, of how he endured slander but never retaliated. Opportunities opened before him. Promotions came, but more importantly, respect returned. He rose to leadership not through shortcuts, not through schemes, but through the steady witness of faith under fire. One morning, as the city stirred awake, he stood in his own office, sunlight streaming across the desk where an open Bible lay. He paused by the window, looking out over the skyline. He was no longer the forgotten assistant, no longer the man whispered about in shame. He was vindicated not because others fell, but because he stood. His story had become a living parable. The righteous may stumble, but by faith they rise again. His vindication was not revenge. It was not the downfall of Clara, nor the guilt of James. It was the quiet triumph of integrity, the reward of choosing faith when compromise seemed easier. His life carried a message clear to all who listened. Faith is not proven in comfort, but in trials. Faith is not merely spoken. It is lived. And so his legacy was not wealth or titles, but testimony. A testimony that truth, though buried, cannot stay hidden. That faith, though tested by fire, emerges pure. And that grace, when chosen, can heal even the deepest wounds.